My name is Marlow Trasker, and I'm about to tell you how I turned my cheating wife's world upside down without breaking a single law. The whole thing started on a Tuesday evening in October when Vanna announced she was going to dinner with my brother Dean instead of me. Just like that. No discussion, no explanation, just a declaration delivered while she applied lipstick in our bedroom mirror. "I've decided to go with Dean to the family dinner on Saturday," she said, not even looking at me. "I think it's time I made my own choices about these things." I was sitting on our bed, watching her get ready for another one of her mysterious evening meetings. At 41, I'd learned to pick my battles, especially with Vanna. But something in her tone, that casual dismissiveness, made my jaw clench. "Your own choices," I repeated, keeping my voice level. "About family dinners." "That's right." She capped the lipstick with a sharp click. "Dean understands me better lately. We have more in common." I wanted to ask what exactly they had in common that we didn't, but I already suspected the answer would make me angrier than I was prepared to handle. Instead, I nodded and said, "Sure, sweetheart, you do you." The sarcasm was lost on her, or maybe she just chose to ignore it. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "Don't wait up. This meeting might run late." After she left, I sat there for a long time, staring at the space where she'd been standing. Vanna worked in PR and event planning, which meant she had meetings at all hours. Or at least, that's what she told me. Lately, those meetings had been happening more often, and she'd been coming home with that particular glow that had nothing to do with professional satisfaction. I'm a software engineer, which means I'm naturally suspicious of systems that don't work the way they're supposed to. And my marriage had been throwing error messages for months. I walked to her dresser and opened the jewelry box where she kept her old phone, the one she claimed was broken but never threw away. It wasn't broken. It was logged into all her social media accounts, and she'd forgotten to sign out. What I found there made my hands shake with rage. Messages between Vanna and Dean going back 3 months. Not romantic messages. They were siblings-in-law, after all, but something almost worse. Conspiratorial messages. Messages about me. "Marlow's been so difficult lately," one read. "He doesn't understand what I need." Dean's response? "You deserve better, V. You always have." "I'm thinking about making some changes. Big changes." "Whatever you decide, I support you. Family first, right?" "Don't tell Marlow about our conversations yet. I need to figure out my next move." I scrolled through weeks of this garbage, my anger building with each exchange. My own brother encouraging my wife's dissatisfaction, positioning himself as her confidant and ally. Against me. But the real kicker was the most recent exchange, from that very afternoon. Vanna. I told him about Saturday. He took it pretty well. Dean. "Good. It's time he learned he can't control everything. See you at Romano's at 8. Romano's. The upscale Italian place downtown where Vanna's parents like to hold their monthly family gatherings. The dinners I'd been attending for 15 years, playing the dutiful son-in-law while Ruth and Arnold Merrick barely tolerated my middle-class existence. I closed the phone and walked to my office, where I kept a bottle of bourbon for occasions that called for serious thinking. This definitely qualified. As I poured myself 2 fingers of Maker's Mark, a plan began forming in my mind. It wasn't fully developed yet, but the basic framework was there. If Vanna wanted to play games, I'd show her how the game was really played. I pulled out my own phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Sela Marek, Vanna's younger sister. Recently divorced, sharp-tongued, and according to family gossip, not particularly fond of her older sister's perfect life. Sela answered on the second ring. "Marlow? This is unexpected." "Hey, Sela. I hope I'm not calling too late." "Not at all. What's up?" I took a sip of bourbon and chose my words carefully. "I was wondering if you had any interest in crashing a family dinner this Saturday, as my date?" There was a pause. Then, "That's an interesting proposition. Any particular reason you're not going with my sister?" "She's decided to go with Dean instead. Something about making her own choices." Another pause, longer this time. "I see. And you want me to be your +1 to what exactly? Make her jealous?" "Something like that. Though I think you might find the evening more entertaining than you expect." Salah laughed, and I could hear the mischief in it. "You know what, Marlow? I've been looking for a reason to ruffle Vanna's feathers. Count me in." After I hung up, I booked a table at Romano's for Saturday night. Not just any table, I specifically requested the one next to the private dining room where the Merrick family always held their gatherings. I told the hostess it was for a special occasion, and I wanted to surprise my wife. That part, at least, was true. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Saturday evening arrived with the kind of crisp October air that makes you think about change. I picked up Selah at 7:30, and she looked stunning in a way that was clearly designed to make a statement. Black dress, red lipstick, and a smile that promised trouble. "You clean up nice, brother-in-law," she said as she slid into my Mustang. "This should be fun." "That's the plan," I said, pulling away from her apartment complex. "How much do you know about what's been going on between Vanna and Dean?" Selah's expression darkened. "More than I'd like. She's been calling me, complaining about you. According to her, you're controlling and don't appreciate her ambitions. And what do you think?" "I think my sister has always been good at rewriting history to make herself the victim." She looked out the window. Dean's always been her favorite in-law, even before they started their little mutual admiration society. We arrived at Romano's at exactly 8 o'clock. The restaurant was busy, filled with the kind of people who considered Italian food a cultural experience rather than just dinner. I could smell expensive cologne and ambition in the air, the perfect atmosphere for what I had planned. The hostess led us to our table, which had a perfect view of the private dining room where Vanna was holding court. She was seated between Dean and a man I didn't recognize. Tall, dark hair, perfect teeth, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. "Who's the stranger?" I asked Selah as we settled into our seats. She followed my gaze and her eyebrows shot up. "That's Chase Harlan. He works at Vanna's firm. Finance manager, I think." She paused. "And unless I'm very much mistaken, he's the reason for all those late-night meetings." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "You're sure? Look at how she's leaning toward him. Look at how he's looking at her." Selah shook her head. "I've seen that look before. Trust me." The waiter appeared at our table, and I ordered a bottle of their best champagne. "We're celebrating," I told him loudly enough for the neighboring table to hear. "My wife and I are working through some relationship issues, and tonight feels like a breakthrough." Vanna's head snapped around at the sound of my voice. Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession: surprise, confusion, and finally anger. She said something to Dean, who turned to look at us with obvious irritation. "Phase 1 complete," I murmured to Selah. "Now for the fun part." I pulled out my phone and opened the folder of screenshots I'd taken from Vanna's messages. Not just the ones between her and Dean, but others I'd found. Messages with Chase, messages with her friend Whitney from work, messages that painted a very clear picture of a woman planning to leave her husband. "Take a look at these," I said, sliding the phone across the table to Selah. She scrolled through the messages, her expression growing darker with each screen. "Oh, this is Rich. She's been planning this for months, hasn't she?" 3 months, to be precise, right around the time she started having all those evening meetings. Selah looked up from the phone, her eyes bright with anger. "She's been playing you, Marlow, and she's been using Dean to do it." "I know. The question is, what are we going to do about it?" Before Selah could answer, Dean appeared at our table. He was trying to look casual, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. "Marlow," he said, forcing a smile. "What a surprise seeing you here." "Is it?" I stood up and extended my hand. "Dean, good to see you. I hope you don't mind that I brought Selah along. Vanna seemed so excited about having dinner with you. I thought we'd make it a real family affair." Dean's handshake was weak, uncertain. "Of course, the more the merrier." "That's what I was thinking." I gestured toward their table. "Why don't you introduce me to your friend, the one sitting next to my wife?" Dean's face flushed. "That's just Chase. He works with Vanna." "Chase Harlan," Selah said, standing up beside me. "Finance manager, drives a Porsche. Recently divorced?" She smiled sweetly at Dean. "Vanna's told me so much about him." The color drained from Dean's face. He mumbled something about getting back to dinner and retreated to his table. I watched him lean over to whisper something to Vanna, who shot a venomous look in our direction. "This is better than cable television," Selah said as we sat back down. The evening continued with a series of small provocations. I made sure our waiter knew we were the Traskers and that we wanted everyone to know how happy we were to be working on our marriage. I ordered dessert for the table and had it delivered to Vanna's party with a note. "From your loving husband, who's learning so much about family tonight." But the real coup de grace came when the check arrived. I'd called ahead and arranged for both tables to be billed to a single account, Vanna's credit card, which I knew was close to its limit thanks to her recent shopping sprees. When the waiter presented the bill to their table, I watched Vanna's face go white as she realized she was being charged for both parties. Her card was declined. Twice. Ruth and Arnold Merrick, Vanna's parents, watched in horror as their daughter fumbled through her purse, trying to find another way to pay. Chase offered his card, but the damage was done. The scene had attracted attention from other diners, and I could see Ruth's face burning with embarrassment. "I think that's our cue to leave," I told Selah, dropping cash on our table to cover our actual bill. As we walked past their table, I stopped and put my hand on Vanna's shoulder. "Thanks for a lovely evening, sweetheart. We should do this again soon." She looked up at me with pure hatred in her eyes. "What do you think you're doing?" "Having dinner with my sister-in-law," I said innocently. "Just like you're having dinner with my brother. Family's important, don't you think?" Outside the restaurant, Selah was practically vibrating with excitement. "That was magnificent," she said. "Did you see Ruth's face when the card got declined?" "That was just the opening move," I told her as we got back in the car. "This game is far from over." I should have known Chase would retaliate. I just didn't expect him to be so crude about it. Monday morning, I walked out to my garage to find my 1967 Mustang Fastback, the car I'd spent 3 years restoring, sitting in a puddle of its own fluids. Someone had dumped sugar in the gas tank and slashed 2 tires. There was a note tucked under the windshield wiper. "Stay away from my girl. C." I stood there for a long moment, looking at my ruined car and feeling something shift inside me. Up until that point, this had been about humiliating Vanna, about showing her that I wasn't the pushover she thought I was. But Chase had just made it personal. I called Tony Bales, my best friend since college and the owner of a small security firm. Tony was former military, the kind of guy who could make problems disappear without anyone getting hurt. "Someone messed with the Mustang," I told him when he answered. "How bad?" "Bad enough that I'm going to need your help with something." Tony was quiet for a moment. "Legal help, I hope." "Completely legal, but definitely dirty." "I'll be there in 20 minutes. While I waited for Tony, I took pictures of the damage and the note. Then I called my insurance company and filed a claim. The adjuster would be out that afternoon, and I'd have documentation of everything. Tony arrived driving his work van, loaded with the kind of equipment that made people nervous. He took one look at the Mustang and whistled low. "Whoever did this wanted to send a message," he said. "You know who it was?" I showed him the note. "Chase Harlan. He's having an affair with my wife." "And you want to send a message back?" "Something like that. But I want it to be creative, and I want it to be public." Tony grinned. "I like the way you think. What did you have in mind?" I'd been thinking about that since I found the car. Chase drove a silver Porsche 911, and he was proud of it. According to Vanna's messages, he'd bought it after his divorce as a symbol of his newfound freedom. He parked it in the same spot every day at his office building, right under a security camera that he probably thought protected him. "How do you feel about seafood?" I asked Tony. That afternoon, while Chase was in meetings, Tony and I paid a visit to the fish market. We bought 20 pounds of the oldest, most pungent fish we could find, stuff that was past its prime and destined for the dumpster. Then we drove to Chase's office building. The security camera was positioned to watch for break-ins, not for people doing maintenance on their own vehicles. I'd done my research. Chase's car was registered to a company lease, and according to the paperwork I'd found online, routine maintenance was the responsibility of the lessee. We worked quickly. Tony kept watch while I opened the hood and packed fish into every available space, around the engine block, in the air filter housing, anywhere the heat would help the smell develop. Then we closed the hood and walked away. The beauty of the plan was its simplicity. The fish wouldn't damage anything permanently, but the smell would be impossible to remove without completely detailing the engine compartment. And in the meantime, Chase would be driving around in a car that smelled like a garbage scow. We didn't have to wait long to see the results. Tony had set up a small camera across the street from the office building, and we watched from his van as Chase discovered our gift. He opened the car door and immediately staggered backward, covering his nose. He tried to drive it anyway, but made it less than 2 blocks before pulling over and getting out. The look on his face was worth every penny I'd spent on rotten fish. "Phase 2 complete," Tony said, packing up his equipment. "What's next?" "Now we wait and see how he responds. If I know guys like Chase, he won't let this go." I was right. That evening, Vanna came home in a fury. "What did you do to Chase's car?" she demanded, storming into the living room where I was watching television. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, not looking away from the screen. "Don't play dumb with me, Marlow. Someone put fish in his engine, and it stinks so bad he can't drive it." "That's terrible. Maybe he should be more careful about where he parks." She moved to stand between me and the television. "This has to stop. Whatever game you think you're playing, it ends now." I looked up at her, taking in the angry flush in her cheeks, the way her hands were clenched into fists. "Game? I'm not playing a game, Vanna. I'm just living my life, making my own choices. Isn't that what you said you wanted to do?" "This is different, and you know it." "Is it? because from where I'm sitting, it looks like we're both just trying to figure out what we want." I stood up, forcing her to take a step back. "The difference is, I'm not sneaking around behind your back to do it." Her face went pale. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I know about Chase. I know about the late meetings, the messages, all of it." I walked past her toward the kitchen. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" She followed me, her voice rising. "You went through my phone?" "I didn't have to. You left it lying around, logged into everything. Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" For a moment, she looked genuinely shocked. Then the anger came back, twice as strong. "You had no right. I had every right. I'm your husband. Or did you forget that part while you were planning your exit strategy with my brother?" She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. I could see her trying to figure out how much I actually knew, how much was bluff. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, keeping my voice calm and reasonable. "You're going to stop seeing Chase, you're going to stop involving Dean in our marriage, and you're going to decide whether you want to work on this relationship or end it, but you're not going to keep playing both sides." "And if I don't?" I smiled, and I could see her flinch at whatever she saw in my expression. "Then you'll find out just how creative I can be when someone threatens what's mine." Vanna didn't stop seeing Chase. If anything, she became more brazen about it, staying out later and offering increasingly flimsy excuses for her absences. She thought she was calling my bluff, testing to see how far I'd actually go. She was about to find out. The next Saturday, I was in my home office when I heard a car door slam in the driveway. Through the window, I saw Vanna getting out of Chase's Porsche. Apparently, he'd managed to get it cleaned enough to drive, though I could see him wrinkling his nose even from a distance. I watched Vanna walk to the front door, then heard her key in the lock. But instead of coming into the house, she went straight upstairs. I could hear her moving around in our bedroom, opening drawers and closets. I crept upstairs and found her kneeling in front of our bedroom safe, trying different combinations on the digital lock. The safe contained our important documents, some cash, and a few pieces of jewelry that had belonged to my grandmother. Looking for something, I asked from the doorway. She spun around, her face flushed with guilt and anger. "I need the insurance papers for my car." "Those are in the filing cabinet downstairs, you know that." She stood up, brushing dust off her knees. "Fine. I was looking for the marriage certificate. My lawyer needs a copy." "Your lawyer?" I stepped into the room. "That's interesting. I didn't know you had a lawyer." Everyone needs legal advice sometimes, especially when they're planning a divorce. I moved closer, watching her face. Or when they're trying to figure out how to access their husband's assets. "That's not... What's the combination you were trying? Our anniversary, your birthday, or maybe Chase's birthday?" Her face went white, and I knew I'd guessed right. "Get out," I said quietly. "This is my house, too." "Get out." I didn't raise my voice, but something in my tone made her step backward. "And tell Chase that if I catch him on my property again, I'll have him arrested for trespassing." She left, but not before I saw her slip something into her purse. Later, I discovered she'd taken the spare key to my office. That's when I called Tony again. "I need to upgrade the security around here," I told him, "and I need to do it fast." Tony arrived that afternoon with a van full of equipment. We installed cameras at every entrance, motion sensors in the yard, and a new smart lock system that would alert my phone if anyone tried to get in. "This is serious hardware," Tony said as we finished the installation. "You expecting a war?" "Something like that. Vanna's getting desperate, and desperate people do stupid things." I was right about that, too. The next Wednesday evening, the motion sensors triggered while I was at work. I checked the camera feed on my phone and saw Vanna and Chase creeping around the side of the house, trying to find a way in. I called the police and reported a break-in in progress, then called Tony. "They're at the house," I told him. "Can you get there before the cops?" "Already on my way." By the time I arrived, Tony had Vanna and Chase sitting on my front steps while 2 police officers took their statements. Vanna was crying, claiming she'd locked herself out and was just trying to get back into her own home. Chase was trying to look supportive while obviously wanting to be anywhere else. "Mr. Trasker," one of the officers said when he saw me, "your wife says she lives here?" "She does, but she also has a key and she knows the alarm code. The only reason she'd be sneaking around in the dark is if she was up to something she didn't want me to know about." The officer looked at Vanna. "Ma'am, do you have your key?" She fumbled in her purse and produced a key ring, but when she tried to use it, the lock didn't turn. I'd had Tony change all the locks that afternoon. "That's interesting," I said. "It's almost like someone was planning to break in." The officers exchanged glances. One of them asked to see my ID and the deed to the house. After confirming that I was the legal owner, they asked Vanna and Chase to leave. "But I live here," Vanna protested. "Not anymore," I said. "Your stuff will be on the front lawn tomorrow morning. You can pick it up any time after 8. Chase finally spoke up. "You can't just kick her out. She has rights." "Actually, I can. This house is in my name only, always has been." I looked at Vanna. "You never wanted your name on the deed, remember? You said it was too much responsibility." The officers left, and Tony helped me carry Vanna's belongings out to the front yard. We worked in silence, piling boxes and suitcases on the lawn like the remnants of a garage sale. "You sure about this?" Tony asked as we finished. "She made her choice when she tried to rob me," I said. "Now she gets to live with it." The next morning, I watched from my office window as Vanna and Chase loaded her belongings into his Porsche and a rented truck. She kept looking up at the house, and I could see her crying. I felt a moment of doubt. 15 years of marriage don't end easily, even when they end badly. But then I remembered the messages, the lies, the attempted break-in. She'd made her choice long before I made mine. My phone rang. It was Selah. "I heard about last night," she said. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Better than fine, actually." "Good, because I have some information you might find interesting." "What kind of information?" "The kind that explains why my sister was so eager to get into your safe. Meet me for coffee, and I'll tell you everything." Selah was waiting for me at a coffee shop downtown, sitting in a corner booth with a manila folder in front of her. She looked tired, like she'd been up all night. "You look like hell," I said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Thanks. You really know how to make a girl feel special." She pushed the folder toward me. "Take a look at this." Inside were bank statements, credit card bills, and what looked like loan applications. All in Vanna's name, but with financial information that didn't match what I knew about our accounts. "Where did you get these?" I asked. "Vanna asked me to co-sign a loan application last month. Said she needed money for her business." Selah sipped her coffee. I said no, but I kept copies of everything she showed me. I studied the documents more carefully. According to the paperwork, Vanna had been applying for a $50,000 personal loan, using inflated income figures and claiming assets she didn't actually own. "She was planning to take the money and run," I said. "That's what it looks like. And Chase was helping her. Look at the bottom of the application." I flipped to the last page and saw Chase's signature as a co-applicant. They'd been planning this together, the affair, the money, all of it. "There's more," Selah said. "I did some digging into Chase's background. He's not exactly the successful finance manager he pretends to be." She pulled out another set of documents. Chase had been fired from his previous job for embezzlement. The charges were dropped as part of a plea agreement, but his professional reputation was ruined. He'd been working at Vanna's firm for less than 6 months, and according to Selah's sources, he was already on thin ice. "So he needs money as much as she does," I said. "More. He's behind on his car payments, his rent, everything. Vanna was his ticket to a better life." I closed the folder and leaned back in my chair. "What do you want out of this, Selah? Why are you helping me?" She was quiet for a moment, staring into her coffee cup. "Vanna's always been the golden child. Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect husband. Meanwhile, I'm the family screw-up, divorced, broke, living in a crappy apartment." "That doesn't answer my question." "She called me last week, after you changed the locks, crying, asking if she could stay with me." Selah looked up, and I could see the anger in her eyes. "But she didn't want comfort or advice. She wanted me to loan her money so she could get an apartment with Chase." "And you said no." "I said no, and she called me selfish, said I was jealous of her happiness." Selah's voice got harder. "She spent our entire lives making me feel like the inferior sister. Now she wants my help to run off with her boyfriend while she's still married to a decent guy." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Thank you for all of this." "Don't thank me yet. Thank me after we finish destroying them." That afternoon, I put the final phase of my plan into motion. I'd been thinking about it since the break-in attempt, refining the details, making sure everything would be legal and devastating. The key was Chase's professional reputation. He was already on probation at work, and any hint of scandal would be enough to get him terminated. And Vanna's career in PR depended entirely on her image and connections, both of which were about to take a serious hit. I started with social media. Using a fake account, I posted the security camera footage of Vanna and Chase trying to break into my house. I tagged it with their real names and a detailed explanation of what they'd been trying to do. The video went viral within hours. Vanna's professional contacts saw it, her clients saw it, her family saw it. The comments were brutal, people calling her a cheater, a thief, worse things that I won't repeat. But that was just the beginning. Next, I sent copies of the loan application documents to Chase's employer, along with a detailed explanation of how he'd been helping my wife commit fraud. I also sent copies to the bank where they'd applied for the loan. Then I called Ruth and Arnold Merrick. "I thought you should know what your daughter has been up to," I told Ruth when she answered the phone. I gave them the whole story, the affair, the attempted break-in, the fraudulent loan application. Ruth listened in silence, occasionally making small sounds of distress. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way," I said, "but I thought it was better coming from me than from the police." "The police?" Ruth's voice was faint. "The bank is investigating the loan fraud, and I'm considering pressing charges for the break-in attempt." After I hung up, I sat in my office and waited. I didn't have to wait long. My phone started ringing at 6 o'clock. First Dean, demanding to know what I thought I was doing, then Vanna, screaming and crying and threatening to sue me for defamation. Then Chase, trying to sound calm and reasonable while clearly panicking. I didn't answer any of them. At 8 o'clock, Tony called. "You need to see the news," he said. I turned on the local evening broadcast and watched a story about a PR executive and her boyfriend being investigated for loan fraud. They used Vanna's company photo and everything. "Jesus," I said. "It gets better. I just drove past Chase's apartment building. There are 2 police cars in the parking lot." I felt a moment of genuine shock. I'd expected consequences, but not this fast or this severe. "Are you okay with this?" Tony asked. I thought about it, really thought about it. Vanna had cheated on me, lied to me, tried to steal from me. She'd humiliated me in front of my own brother and planned to disappear with money she didn't earn. "Yeah," I said. "I'm okay with it." The final confrontation came on a Thursday evening, 2 weeks after the news story broke. I was in my kitchen, making dinner and enjoying the peace and quiet of my empty house, when I heard cars pulling into my driveway. Through the window, I could see Vanna getting out of a rental car, followed by Chase and Dean. They looked like a war council, grim-faced and determined. I called Tony. "They're here? All of them? The whole crew. You might want to head over." Already in my truck. I met them at the front door before they could ring the bell. Vanna looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes wrinkled, and she had the hollow-eyed look of someone who hadn't been sleeping. "We need to talk," she said. "I don't think we do, but come on in anyway." They filed into my living room like mourners at a funeral. Chase couldn't meet my eyes, and Dean kept looking around like he was cataloging everything he saw. "You've ruined my life," Vanna said without preamble. "I lost my job, my apartment, everything. You ruined your own life. I just made sure people knew about it." The loan application was Chase's idea. "Hey!" Chase finally found his voice. "That's not fair. You were the one who—" "Who what?" I asked. "Who wanted to steal money from her husband? Who tried to break into his house? Which part was your idea, Chase?" He shut up, which was probably the smartest thing he'd done in months. Dean stepped forward, trying to play peacemaker. "Look, Marlow, maybe we can work something out. Vanna's learned her lesson. She's sorry." "Is she?" I looked at Vanna. "Are you sorry for cheating on me, or are you sorry you got caught?" She glared at me with pure hatred. "I'm sorry I wasted 15 years of my life with someone who doesn't understand what I need." "And what do you need, Vanna? A boyfriend who's been fired for embezzlement? A loan you can't qualify for? A life built on lies and fraud?" "I need someone who supports my dreams instead of trying to control me." "Your dreams." I laughed, and the sound was harsh even to my own ears. "Your dream was to steal $50,000 and disappear with your boyfriend. That's not a dream, Vanna. That's a crime." Chase stood up abruptly. "I don't have to listen to this. Actually, you do. This is my house, and you're here because I'm allowing it." I looked at him steadily. "How's the job search going, by the way? I heard your former employer wasn't willing to provide a reference." His face flushed red. "You destroyed my career." "I exposed your character. There's a difference." Tony's truck pulled into the driveway, and I saw Chase's eyes dart toward the window. He knew who Tony was, and he knew why he was here. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, standing up. "You're all going to leave. Vanna, you can file for divorce anytime you want. I won't contest it, but you're not getting alimony, and you're not getting half of anything. The prenup you signed covers that." "What prenup?" Dean asked. Vanna's face went even paler. "I never told you about the prenup." "Because you were hoping I'd forgotten about it," I said. "But I didn't, and neither did my lawyer." The prenup had been Vanna's idea, actually. Early in our marriage, when she was worried about protecting her own assets from my potential creditors. She'd insisted on language that protected whoever was the innocent party in case of infidelity. "You can't prove I cheated," she said weakly. I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo, one of dozens that Tony had taken over the past few weeks. This one showed her and Chase kissing in the parking lot of a hotel. I can prove whatever I need to prove. Tony knocked on the front door, and I went to let him in. He nodded to me, then looked at the 3 people in my living room. "Everything okay here, Marlow?" "Just fine. My guests were just leaving." Chase was the first to move, practically running for the door. Dean followed, mumbling something about how this wasn't over. Vanna was the last to go, stopping in the doorway to look back at me. "I loved you," she said quietly. "Once." "I know," I replied. "I loved you too, but love isn't enough when there's no trust." She left, and I watched through the window as they drove away. Tony stayed for a while, making sure they didn't come back, but the house felt empty in a way it hadn't before. "You okay?" Tony asked as we sat on the front porch, drinking beer and watching the sunset. "I think so. It's strange, you know? I spent so much energy planning this, executing it, making sure they got what they deserved. Now it's over, and I'm not sure what comes next." "What comes next is whatever you want. You're free, man. Really free." I thought about that as Tony drove away, and I went back into my empty house. Free. It was a word I hadn't associated with myself in a long time. I walked through the rooms, seeing them differently now, not as the scene of a failed marriage, but as the foundation for whatever came next. I had my work, my friends, my integrity. I had a house that was truly mine, and a life that no one could take away from me. In my office, I opened the bottle of bourbon and poured myself a drink. Then I raised the glass in a toast to the empty room. "Here's to new beginnings," I said aloud, "and to the satisfaction of a job well done." Outside, it started to rain, washing the last traces of the old life away and preparing the ground for whatever would grow in its place. The game was over, and I had won. But more importantly, I had learned something about myself in the process, that I was stronger than I thought, smarter than my enemies believed, and capable of protecting what mattered to me. It was a good lesson to learn, even if it came at such a high price. The story ends here, with rain washing the windows and bourbon warming my chest and the certain knowledge that some battles are worth fighting, no matter what they cost.